Cella System, Cradle of Celia, mid-2670. First Lieutenant O'Brien, 4th ODR Battalion, Raptor Company. With their first objective a success, and now he would move on to the next objective. Gather round, Raiders. His troops encircled him, their attention now on their commander. We have the assets, and once we receive word that they're clear, we'll move on to the next mission. Until then, get situated near the entrance to town. Get some cover and hunker down until I get more word. Clear? Rah, they replied in unison, making their way to the entrance of the town. There were 3 ways one could enter the town that his scouts have found shortly after the town got deserted. There was an old road that took a route to their north that followed the bottom of the nearby mountains and hills to the nearest town. The second was 2 platforms sized for commercialized or military shuttles. This was the main route taken last night during the evacuation, some opting to take their personal vehicles and took the road north. The final entry point was by rail. His troops investigated it and found it operated similar to their own system, using electromagnetic to propel it, but it was not used for the evacuation. From the signs surrounding the station, it indicated that the rail would lead straight into the heart of the capital city, or at least the inner edge of it. All 3 of these forms were located near the northeastern part of the town, and was where the squad had split up their cover into the surrounding houses. Gray and 3 other raiders took a large building that faced the main road and the shuttle pads. Another team of 4 white-marked raiders split up into teams of 2 into houses closer to the main town gate. Strega, Darien, and O'Brien holed up in a building in full view of the rail station's entrance, as well as the main road that led to Aleska's home. As per his orders, his troops maintained radio silence, but spoke with their integrated proximity chat. Strega laid her back against a wall as she peered out the nearby window, which was just short enough for her to view the top of the rail station platform. She set the curtains in a way where the sun would not land on her, and she could view it unimpeded. Darien was in the same room, but he had moved a table near the window and placed his Series 10 suppressed marksman rifle on the table with the bipod extended. In the same fashion, he situated himself to stay out of the sun while maintaining a clear view of both the landing zones and the main town entrance. The road was paved in parallel from their view, and then took a left to Aleska's home. O'Brien sat right of the window, but maintained cover completely, as the sun would land on him, making him visible to a curious onlooker. Instead, he closed his portion of the curtains and let Strega and Darien keep watch. "Any word for the Admiral?" Strega spoke, her voice artificial sounding from her helmet. "A short transmission," O'Brien replied. "Said they should be entering the system soon, and that we'll get our all clear, but never mentioned what it's going to look like." He relaxed into his chair, his rifle lapped over his chest. "Did you put in a requisition? How are we going to get to the main city?" Darien spoke. His posture was relaxed as his rifle stood on its bipod and maintained stability as he rested his chin on his wrists. His helmet was placed next to his feet by the leg of the table. "Of course I did," O'Brien confirmed. "Got us some pumas, a couple of rhinos, and to finish off, a couple of grizzlies." Strega whistled at the order, noting her surprise. "I called dibs on a puma. Dare, you got gunner?" He nodded. "Not this time. I'm taking my own ride, ain't that right, sir?" "Yours probably won't have the gun. A strict scout model. Quiet, too." Darien acknowledged his ride, but that also meant he was most likely going to have a spotter again. For several hours, they made small banter when the digital signs of the rail station lit up with activity. By now, the weather had darkened, making the scene gray, and the sounds of wind were picking up. "Sir, rail systems active," Strega reported. Their attributed changed, and the air surrounding them grew cold and silent, save for Mother Nature. "Raiders, we might have a guest. Wake up and shut up," he transmitted, breaking their previous bout of radio silence. The rail car approached the station, and with her helmet, Strega utilized a small zoom function incorporated into it that could give a binocular zoom of around 5 times magnification. It wasn't a function you would use in junction with a weapon that wasn't equipped with a HUD link system module. Otherwise, it was just a set of expensive binoculars. "I count 1. Male, 25 to 40. I think they're wearing an officer uniform. O'Brien moved over to just above Strega and utilized the same function on his helmet. He matched it the description from Yorla and Gruda, as well as information gathered from both Minerva and Athena, Chief General Tlac. I have a shot, sir. Should I disable him? Darien sounded eager to fire as he positioned the rifle into his shoulder and looked into its scope, ready to land the blow. Permission denied. Let him walk. Darien grumbled lightly and set the rifle on safe, but traced his reticle over the body of the Celian. O'Brien watched as Tlac wandered the streets of his town, now void of life. There were traces of leftover luggage and trash overblown from open trash bins. He walked slow as he looked around, trying to find signs of life, but finding none. He traveled further down the road to the home of his wife and entered it, as witnessed by O'Brien, Strega, and Darien. Think he'll find the note? Strega commented. If he doesn't, then he's a terrible general, replied Darien, keeping his rifle aimed in the direction of the house. Remind me again, sir. Why can't I shoot the bastard? Darien added, wouldn't that go against the general's direct order? O'Brien thought deep on that subject. He was well within his rights to capture the man who single-handedly started a war between their species, who took captives and sent them to a fate worse than death itself. Of course, he wanted to execute him, but deep down, he wanted the one who started it, to watch his empire fall in front of him, to be in a position where he could act but could not defend what he needed to most. It wasn't his idea originally. The idea was brought to him in private from the Admiral and supplemented with statistics from both Minerva and Athena. You want me to do what? Like I said, don't kill him if you come across him, Wolf repeated. I wasn't told to kill him, only capture. You're not seeing it, O'Brien. There can be more to defeating the enemy than a simple kill or capture order. He was confused. What did he not get? What purpose was there in keeping a commanding general to continue to command? Then enlighten me. First off, you know of the request made by Gruda? He nodded. Minerva had scanned through some archives from their census bureau aboard Lassa Station. Turns out they had more than we needed, and we also came across public records of well-known individuals. O'Brien was following, but urged Wolf to continue. We have the public records of individuals personally related to Tlac. Just like Gruda said, a mother of two, Aleska Talesk. Secure her safety and fake a disappearance, but make it where she was sent to safety. Once you've done your part, I'll take care of the general, on equal footing. Then we'll strike. At his best, huh? O'Brien said aloud, reminiscing of the memory. O'Brien found it mildly petty, but just as entertaining. To think that he would circumvent his own general for the whims of an admiral of a rival branch. He found it ironic, really, but decided to go with it. His primary mission was the capture of the War Council, and Tlac was second to that. He could overlook Tlac presence here as he tried to give one farewell before the upcoming battle. Sorry she's not here, bud, he thought to himself before he was called to by Strega, directing his gaze out the window and over the landing pads. Contact, sir. 2 shuttles. They were gray with a blue tint to the finish with markings on the side of the door. What do they read? Celian Ground Troop, Gander's Fist, she replied. All that and for what? Commented Darien. It's almost like painting a target on your back. When the shuttles made contact with the ground, the side doors opened, and a series of armored troopers exited the vehicle, their weapons drawn, and created a perimeter of the landing zone. They wore similar armor to the guards from the night before, but instead of a white and black scheme, their armor was colored brown and dark gray, with a dark tan-colored undersuit. They also wore a helmet, but its construction differed from the troops prior. It had a more angled eave for the visor that was colored amber, and instead of brown, the helmet was colored mostly gray. Markings decorated the forehead portion of the helmet to mimic their own markings, in a glacial blue. Their weapons were compact and still looked large compared to their frame. The rifle in question was unlike what they had seen previous and seemed specialized to them. It looked as if it had a large frontal portion of the barrel shroud that created a rectangle silhouette on top and bottom of where the barrel sits. The stock was connected as part of the weapon's frame with the magazine loaded in the rear for an overall bullpup-style rifle. Paired with that, They also wielded a sidearm on their waist belt that looked like it was fired by hammer pull instead of the standard striker-fired series of handguns the TRSC favored. O'Brien had feared that the enemy had come to them in response to the evacuation or missing guard, but the approaching Tlac revealed otherwise. Even with his enhanced hearing system, even he couldn't make out what Tlac was speaking with the lead trooper. "Strega, see what you can find on their military. These guys look much different compared to previous infantry." "I'll note it, but from what I've seen, there might not be much of a difference." He understood what she meant, alluding to the investigation of the armor of the first century. At best, it could stop lower-end calibers and maybe shrapnel. He would need a larger sample size, so he would rather not underestimate any Celian trooper he came across. After a short exchange, Tlac went with the troopers, and once all had entered their respective shuttles, the doors closed, and they took off towards the atmosphere. O'Brien would order his squad to wait several minutes to make sure they don't do a second or third pass and catch them just as they exit their cover. He didn't exactly have the means to take down a shuttle with the weapons he had. After he deemed it safe, O'Brien received a message, the alarm originating from Athena's storage device. He brought her up, meeting him just below eye level. "Sir, I've received a notification from Vice Admiral Wolf for you." She gave a bow, a developing habit for every first visual appearance. "What's it say?" O'Brien questioned. "Simply a timer of 12 hours and 46 minutes in the word descending." "Understood," he said, placing her away back on his waist. "All teams, you have 12 hours and 30 minutes to rest. I suggest you take it. Keep at least one man on watch." "Aye, aye," replied the squad. O'Brien was now given a timeline for their assault, for when hell would finally break loose on their planet. He would rather not feel that way, but deep down, he relished in what was about to come. The War Council would meet its end, and he was ecstatic he was picked to lead it. The Celians had not known true ground war, and by tonight, they would. O'Brien would be woken up by an alarm he set just after his watch, and he would be met with another darkened sky. Except this time, the day that had originally turned gray was now a clear and starry night. He took a moment to look up into the night sky, and beside the flickering stars of other systems were a mass of flashing lights that danced around erratically. The fight had begun. "All hands! On me! Double time!" He exited his building with Strega and Darion behind him, their helmets donned, and their visage was that of a warrior eager for combat. When all had gathered, Strega lit a beacon that transmitted an experimental delta band frequency, a rediscovered mode of encryptable communication, and strobing infrared lights. She set the beacon in the center of the landing pads, which also connected to the main road, as the newly designated LZ. O'Brien then addressed the group. "The time is now. We're in enemy territory, deep behind enemy lines." He pointed to the sky as countless lights flashed in and out of existence, the scene reflecting off their visors. "It might not seem like much, but the squids above are fighting and dying as we speak, against an enemy that has shown us no quarter. While we have shown compassion to their innocent, they enslaved our own. It's now our time to bring the fight to their home. Not in space, but in their home. The land, air, and sea. We have seen what they did to us over 2 systems, but we drove them back. And now we have delivered that retribution tenfold. Remember this moment, when humanity takes the capital of our first alien race. Oorah, Raiders! Oorah, sir! They replied in a visceral scream, enough to shatter the world itself. That was their will, and it wanted blood. And as their will, it would also grant them the means to enact their revenge when the whir of engines enveloped their area. It was a familiar sound that the Raiders had grown accustomed to in the field, the Kestrel. A ship designed for rapid field transit of vehicles, weapons, supplies, and sometimes troops. Its frame was essentially a rectangle attached to thrusters and a cockpit. The sides and rear walls of the box were raised into itself from the top, revealing their cargo as they landed on the main road to disembark the cargo. They were Pumas, lightly armored reconnaissance vehicles, with a rear gun attached, except for one. There were 4 in total, and O'Brien's squad commandeered them, driving them out of the Kestrel and onto the road where they were parked as the beginning of a convoy. Several of the lower enlisted raiders stood by the vehicles, inspecting them for damage, ammo, and fuel. The next wave consisted of 4 Kestrels, their heavy variant, which had moderate cargo space for the next vehicle to disembark, the Rhino. It's a 6-wheeled armored personnel carrier with a 25mm cannon atop it, with an addition remote-controlled .50 caliber machine gun, and 2 of them were delivered. As they parked behind the Pumas, the rear doors of the APCs opened, revealing more troops to supplement his attack force, a total of 24 additional troops. They reported to their officer in command, O'Brien. They were 2 squads of Raptor Company that had stayed behind during both the attack on Lass's station and O'Brien's current mission. It was safe to say that since Draxus, they were eager to enter combat. Before returning to their vehicles, O'Brien called out to the squad leader of Bravo Squad, Sergeant Auclair. "What's the status in orbit? I would imagine that it was difficult to get you all through their barricade." "To be honest, sir," she started, "it was chaos aboard the assault carrier. Their defenses are top-notch, but what happened?" "What you might expect. Our escort ships protecting our ship were destroyed, and our assault carrier took heavy damage. Lost a lot of the pods in the fight." Her expression was sadness, fueled by anger, not just from the slaughter of our sailor cousins, but of our fellow raider brothers and sisters. Hearing the damage to his beloved ship welled up anger within him that he could feel rising in his chest, but he collected himself in front of his trooper. "I understand. Will she be operational if we need raider support?" he inquired. She nodded. "We lost some pods, but not the spirit. Those who don't have a pod should be getting shuttled to a ship that has extra." He was pleased to hear that they could get reinforcements, but it might be some time before they could actually call on them. He hoped that the Vice Admiral would take that into account when it came to the siege of the city. He was going to need it. "Return to your squad once we get the heavy armor. We're departing, copy?" "Yes, sir." She rendered a salute, as did he, and she returned to her squad besides the APC she arrived in. The final 2 Kestrels to arrive were much different in condition compared to the previous 6. These were larger, but there was also considerable damage with smoke emitting from one of the dorsal panels. "Kestrel 131, you have smoke on your back." The pilot returned a quip, disregarding the damage report. "Well aware, but she'll make it. She always does." He cut the comms and the doors to the cargo compartment opened, revealing a large vehicle with 2 sets of treads and a 130mm cannon on top, loaded with all kinds of rounds made to decimate tank and cover alike. It was the Grizzly. The 2 Grizzlies rolled out from the cargo hold and onto the shuttle landing pads, the hard and sharp ting of gears and mechanical engineering heard in conjunction with its engine. It was a miracle that they came out unscathed. This rose their combat effectiveness to a new height, and morale was boosted among the raiders who saw it, sharing their awe as the 2 battle tanks made their way to their spots in the convoy. 1 tank in front, the 2 APCs in the center, and the final tank in the rear. 2 Pumas would exist out of the convoy as their own element. O'Brien would take his seat as the passenger of Strega's Puma, and Gray would man the gun of the 2nd Puma beside them in the front of the convoy. "All hands, this is your lieutenant," he said, projecting into the command channel that all in his squad had access to receive. "This is it. Check your gear, check your ammo, and follow your training. Recon team, survey the main road and check for any unpaved roads. Look for any emplacements we need to worry about. Main armor, once hostiles are revealed, you have full execute authority." A series of acknowledgement was heard from the drivers. They weren't from his company, but they were attached. That made them his to look out for, but with guns of their size he wasn't worried. With his assessment and accountability of his current force, he ordered their advance, the sounds of engines and treads filling the air. "Raptor Company, move out!" And in turn, they replied, as was tradition, "Hoorah!"